And Ruth, are you ready?
I am, thank you.
Good. All right. Welcome to the PEG Access Advisory Committee. I'm Carlin Reed. I'm the chair of the committee. I'll let you all know that this meeting is being recorded. We have today a number of items on our agenda. In addition to the usual roll call, the meeting of the minutes, we have special guests from the Massachusetts Department of Telecommunications and Cable, Lindsay DeRoche, Michael Mail, and Courtney Walker. We'll also be doing an update with Minuteman Media Network Studio, and we'll talk briefly about the PEG Access Program Awards. And if we have time, we'll take a look at the PEG Access Advisory Committee's charge revision proposals, take some liaison comments, public comments, and then do an adjournment of the proceeding. So that's the general approach of how we do things here. Let's do a quick roll call first so that we identify all the committee members. Carlin Reed, that's me, I'm here. Vince Carlson.
Here.
Okay. Court Booth.
Here.
Ruth Lauer.
Here.
Good. Scott Hopkinson may be joining us later on as well. Okay, so Madam Clerk, we do have a quorum, don't we?
You do.
Very good. Okay, now, Lindsay, let me ask you this. Do you have time for us to go through our minute approval before we get to your section, or are you in a rush?
Sure, no, I'm yours for the meeting, so
Okay.
take your time.
Okay, so what we're going to do is look at the minutes that Ruth has graciously prepared for us of May 6th, the PEG Access Advisory Committee minutes. And I'm going to ask the committee members, which you've already received these documents, are there any corrections to these minutes? And if so, let me know what they are.
I have none.
Okay. Vince, how about you?
Oh, no, I have none.
I would move approval.
Can I have a second? We have a second. Thank you, Court. All right, any further discussion? All right, now let's do a roll call vote. Carlin Reed votes yes, approval. Vince Carlson.
Yes.
Ruth Lauer.
Yes.
And Court Booth.
Yes.
Very good. Motion passes. Okay. Minutes have been approved. All right, now next it comes the really tough part of the whole process is figuring out when we're going to meet next. And I've put on the agenda, now Lois is laughing because it really is kind of complicated because we don't know if we're going to be in Zoom or in person. I'm kind of guessing this is going to be an in-person meeting for our next meeting. And I'm going to recommend that to the committee members that our next meeting hold off till September 9. That is the, let's see, that is the second Thursday in the month of September. That means taking off July and August, basically. Now, I don't see a real strong need for us to meet during the middle of the summer. And I think you folks have worked hard enough that you're entitled to take a couple months off, unless you particularly want to meet as a group during that time. So let me ask, I'm going to start with Court first, and then Vince, and then Ruth. Looking at the September 9 meeting date at 1 to 2:30 p.m., most likely in person. How do you feel about that, Court?
1 o'clock might, that should be fine. I may have to take part of the meeting in the car, but that'll be fine. And I agree with you. Let's not meet in the summer unless we bring agenda items forward that are necessary in the interim.
Okay, sounds good. Vince, what about you? How about September 9 at 1 o'clock?
Sounds good. When is Labor Day? That's the Tuesday before, a week before.
So.
That's
Monday the 6th.
Yeah, right, the 6th. Thank you very much, Michael.
That should be good. I think.
So it's after Labor Day. All right. Okay, and Ruth, how are you? Wait a minute, Ruth. This is your last meeting, isn't it?
Yes, I'm going off board.
You're going off board, so we will have a vacancy in your spot. I shall not ask you. You're welcome to join us if you wish, but
Oh,
you'll be not as a
thank you.
member. All right, let me take this moment right now. Thank you, Ruth, very much for your tireless efforts for the last 3 years on this committee. You did a very good job, and I especially appreciate your services as clerk and as colleague as well. So thank you very much, Ruth.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I would second that. If we were to read the list of committees and task forces and responsibilities that Ruth has taken on behalf of the town of Concord, we'd be here for a long time. So suffice it to say, Ruth, thank you. It's been wonderful to work with you.
Thank you, Court. And not for the first time have we worked together, right?
Correct. Not the last either, I'm quite sure.
There you go.
I can see that. All right. Vince, how do you feel about, are you okay? You're okay with that? Okay, good. So let's tentatively set the date for September 9th at 1 o'clock. Something happens in the next 2 months, I'll give you a shout and we'll take it from there. All right.
Carlin, where do you meet when you meet in person?
We don't know yet. See, that's the whole kicker right now. In the past, we've met in 2 different locations. One has been in the select board room and the other has been at the Minuteman Media Network TV studio, in the studio itself. So between now and September 9, we'll figure that out and I will give you all of you adequate notice of this, not just posting it, but send you the emails as well saying, hey, we're going to meet this in person. It depends on what the town decides to do and what's available, but I'll get that scheduled at least for the first meeting. And at that first meeting, we're going to be electing officers to see who's going to be the next chair. So that's the process. And my last plug, if you want to join Carol, someone else, to fill Ruth's seat, please do so. Vince, did you have a question?
I think there are some interim activities. Hopefully we'll have a little bit of time, maybe at the end or later in the meeting to discuss that. I don't think they involve the whole committee, but more or less individual activities and some projects that may be dependent on things like federal funding, which should be locked down as sooner rather than later.
Good, very good. Remind me, don't let me adjourn without us talking about that, okay? I think that's important. All right, okay, so we have the next meeting date. Now we're going to turn to the Department of Telecom and Cable. And Lindsay, Michael, Courtney, this is where you step up. And I'm going to turn the microphone over to you just very briefly. Folks, these folks are kind of to join us from the Department of Telecommunications and Cable. I've asked them to join us today because we're within our review period for the franchise renewal process. We have 2 folks on this call who are from Carlisle. They are also in their renewal process. So this is the time for the DTC to give us a short presentation about what to expect when we go through this cable franchise, because we haven't done this for 2 years. Or no, excuse me, we haven't done this for 10 years.
10 years.
10 years, and it's coming up and we need some advice. And I think the town is relying on us to help guide this process. Carlisle is in this process right now on their franchise. And I'm about ready to stop talking. So Lindsay, the show is yours. Go ahead.
Well, thank you very much, Carlin, and I'll quickly turn it over to Michael, but let me just introduce myself first. My name is Lindsay DeRoche. I'm the director of the competition division at the Department of Telecom and Cable. And my division is responsible for most of the regulatory functions of the department, as well as for monitoring the health and marketplace of both the cable and telecommunications market in the state. And one of the functions we do is we act as a resource for communities like yourself to discuss franchising issues and try to help sort out both franchising, PEG access, and other cable issues for different communities across the Commonwealth. And the person that mostly does that is Michael Mayle, who has joined us. He's our community liaison. So I am here today mostly just to support Michael and to say hello and thank you for inviting us. I know we also have Courtney Walker. She's an attorney with the department, and Courtney just joined our department in March and is quickly coming up to speed on cable issues. So we thought this would be a good opportunity for Courtney to see a little bit of what we do and learn from the communities directly what some of the questions and issues are that we deal with. So with that, I'd say thank you, and I'd turn it over to Michael Mayle.
Good afternoon. There's 2 different ways I can go about this. I have addressed your committee a number of years ago. I can give you a presentation. You can ask questions at any time. I can field questions off the bat, whichever you prefer. I can field questions at the end.
Why don't you give us the spiel first, okay? That'll get us used to it, okay? Thanks.
Hi, my name is Michael Mayle. I'm a financial analyst with the competition division of the Department of Telecommunications and Cable. Previously known as the Department of Telecommunications and Energy, a restructuring in 2007 created a separate agency for telecommunications and cable to reflect the market consolidation of those two industries. Our main functions are, we have oversight of the cable industry in the areas of licensing, rate regulation, and customer service. The division is still responsible for the regulatory function, and we have a consumer division as part of our agency that enforces the customer service standards. The FCC has given our office authority in the area of licensing as they've given to each state. Massachusetts has granted direct authority in the area of licensing to the 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts. In our office, we have a municipal liaison, myself as well, whose primary function is to maintain a database of all licenses in the state, as well as serve as a resource of information for local officials needing information about the licensing process. This afternoon's meeting is a prime example of the function of our office. We come and talk to cities and towns about the initial and renewal licensing process. We do not participate in the licensing process because our office serves as the appellate body for any disputes that arise between the city or town and cable operator. We do, however, provide technical assistance with the process, such as explaining timeframes and maintaining a database of existing licenses so the cities and towns can look at licenses negotiated by communities of similar size to get ideas what they might seek in their license. Concord is seeking to complete its renewal license. A renewal license can last from as little as 30 months in a day up to 10 years, the state statutory limit. The specific time frame is one of the areas in which a franchise has the most power to negotiate with. So basically, your license, I believe, expires April 21st, 2024. So you would get there's a formal process that's initiated. It can be initiated by the community or the operator, but invariably it's initiated by the operator. And they send out what's called the 626 letter, which is the letter indicating its desire. That's the federal statute, 626. And that's the city or town and the operator indicating their desire to begin the process of the license renewal. It's always done this way to make sure that the appellate rights of both the operator and the city and town are protected. The window for license renewal with this letter has to be sent is between 30 and 36 months. And I said before that the shortest term of a license is 30 months and a day, because what would happen is if you're having some real contentious negotiations, what might happen is that you agree to a license that's 30 months and 1 day, and on the same day that you sign the license, the operator would hand you another 626 letter saying you're back in the window to negotiate your next license. So that's why we need it to be that extra day so you can protect the appellate rights by using the formal process, which needs to be activated by starting in that window. I said I maintain a database of licenses. If you go onto our website, which is the DTC's homepage, and you scroll down, you'll see we have something called licenses on there. And we've been doing a very good job, particularly Shonda Green, who's our office secretary, of keeping all licenses that come in, posting them up there. And between myself and Shonda, we do go out there and get any licenses periodically that we know were signed but haven't been turned over. Technically, it's the community's responsibility to provide the license to the office, but oftentimes we'll get it through the operator. And as soon as we get them, we post them. So a community such as yourself, when you're negotiating, would benefit by being able to go onto that database and look at all the licenses, particularly if surrounding communities, Concord might look at Lexington, I know Carlisle, of course, is right next door, Weston, Dover, any of the communities that are in the general vicinity, Lincoln, and get an idea of what they got in their recent licenses and use that as some type of template to be able to understand, A, what the operator's giving as far as negotiated terms. And B, also to use that if an operator says, no, if Comcast doesn't seem to be interested in providing an increase in your franchise fee, and you can point to communities in your area that have received that. So I think it's a very good utility available to all the communities to take advantage of. Once the renewal starts, at this point, the community is to begin the first step of the process called ascertainment. This is where the community conducts a variety of inquiries to ascertain the community's needs. Certain areas cannot be addressed in the license, such as programming and rates. The operator's First Amendment rights protect its channel carriage. Rates, to the extent they are regulated, are handled at the state level. Amongst the possible actions would be to hold public hearings. While the community is obligated to hold one public hearing before the license is signed, the division encourages at least one additional hearing. Holding it at the beginning of the ascertainment process would benefit the community twofold. First, it would allow members of the public to weigh in on the areas they feel need to be addressed in the upcoming license. Second, would serve as a safety for the community where some subscribers indicated that the town signed the license that was not responsive to their needs. Two, have meetings with groups such as senior citizens, community access people, police and fire personnel, get ideas as to what existing license terms have been beneficial and what other terms they would like to see in the new license. Send out a survey so that the Cable Advisory Committee can learn of areas where the operator has fared well and those where it has fared poorly. Amongst the areas to take into account would be the term of the renewal, service area and line extension, and system upgrade and future technology, which in the past have been probably far more important, and access. So the term of the renewal, operators, particularly Comcast, has over 200 communities in the state, and they have a limited manpower of their government relations people. So for Comcast, they would prefer to have a 10-year license so that they wouldn't have to deal more than necessary with any one community. So oftentimes, if the operator isn't responsive to, say, an increase in a percentage of revenue to a capital percentage or a grant for capital, oftentimes that's one area where the community is able to take advantage and look at those, and indicate that if they're not going to be getting the grants they need or what they believe is necessary, that they want to sign a shorter term renewal. And that can be used, as a way of, as a negotiating tool to get the operator to perhaps compromise or give in on some of those areas. Service area and line extension. I assume that a community like Concord is fully built out. You might have someone trying to talk. I thought maybe.
No, that was me gesturing. We don't know what the extension of the line is. How do we find that out? Pardon me for interrupting.
You're talking about the line extension. All right, so there's three things. There's service area. So typically that's going to be the whole town, the town of Concord. Then there's line extension. So if you have some people who need to be served, but the plant doesn't go that far, then they would have to negotiate, like, as far as getting the plant to pass additional homes to provide service to them. And then there's extending the plant in the sense of long drops, because oftentimes the contracts will say, and we'll provide connection, you have to be within 90 feet or 130 feet, 150 feet. In some more rural areas, they've gone up to probably 200 feet. But once you get past that, either the operator won't serve, but more likely they'll charge a significant amount of money to provide that connection. And it can be pretty prohibitive if it's one home. But if you're going to some other type of subdivision where there might be 10 homes, then the operator is going to be far more likely to extend to do longer drops and to extend the plan. You know, it used to be when this process started, you would have some of the contracts say 30 or even 40 homes per mile was the minimum before they would serve a part of the community. But with the advent of additional services, as well, of course, as internet and phone, where the revenue has increased so dramatically for operators from these services, there are some communities now in Western Mass where the numbers are down in the 12 to 15 homes passed per mile. And Lindsay might talk about it later. MBI, without the subsidies of those communities in certain parts of the state that otherwise would never get built because they simply don't have the density of population, there's been subsidies. So Comcast and Charter have signed a number of those communities up and are in the process of building out and starting to provide services in some pretty rural areas of Western Mass in the Berkshires and such.
Okay, Michael, can we go to the next step? You said the first step is the ascertainment.
Yeah.
And then what's the next step after that?
Well, once the ascertainment's done, we typically, I'll present it. It's kind of, it's a matter of negotiating. While the operator and the community should always maintain a negotiation on what we call the formal process, which is the process, like I indicated before, where you follow the steps and make sure that the appellate rights are both. At the same time, you can have a parallel negotiation, what we call the informal process. That's particularly effective in communities where there isn't that much, there aren't that many areas of disagreement or dispute, and that can be done with an exchange of licenses on a regular basis, going back and forth, and marked up licenses, proposed licenses. So I'll go through it real quick. When preparing this proposal, the city or town should keep in mind that the operator might very well conduct its own survey. So if you do go out and conduct a survey, you should understand the operator might conduct a survey to confirm or contest any of the conclusions reached by the community. Understanding the renewal timeframe is essential to assuring a successful and smooth renewal process. Once a community receives a formal proposal, it has either 120 days or until the end of the license term to either grant or deny the license, whichever is sooner. If a denial is made, it must be based upon strong evidence that the operator has failed in one of 4 areas. These include whether the operator has substantially complied with all material terms of the existing license. 2, the overall quality of the operator's service in areas such as, but not limited to, signal quality and customer service. The operator is financially and technically capable to provide service for the term of the license, and the operator's proposal meets all the community's reasonable future cable-related needs. In the history of the United States, there has been one successful license denial. I think another one got kind of close. So,
but Michael, there have been instances when license negotiations have been delayed or extended, right?
absolutely.
And what's the average time for delaying and extending?
Well, okay, so when I was talking about the 10-year time frame, that's statutory. So if you had a 5-year license, as an example, and you weren't able to kind of complete negotiation, you can just extend that license for a year, 2 years. You can extend it all the way out to 10 years. Can't go past 10 years. 10 years is a statutory deadline. So what's been happening, particularly with the pandemic a lot, is that many communities rather, and operators haven't completed the process Not necessarily because of significant disagreements, although that does play into it sometimes, but also simply because they haven't had the chance to get together and to nail out, all the terms. So what would happen is that if your Board of Selectmen gets that proposal, all right, let me just, this will explain it a little bit. Community should have your ascertainment complete a year before the license expires, but no later than 6 months prior to the expiration. Once it's complete, the community can provide its findings to the operator, who can then incorporate these findings into a proposed license. The operator cannot provide the proposal until the community has indicated that it has completed its ascertainment. Once this is done, the community has received its proposal, the 120-day time frame kicks in. However, if you haven't given it to them by 120 days, you're going to get a formal license proposal from the operator. And your selectman or your mayor, depending on the form of government, will have that amount of 120 days to vote yay or nay on that specific license. Oftentimes what happens, though, is that in the background, people are still negotiating different terms. And what will happen is at the selectmen's meeting, you'll have your hearing and you'll vote no. If you vote no on a license and you deny the license, you have 30 days to provide the department with what we call a PAD, a preliminary assessment of denial.
Okay, Michael, I've got to hold you up right there. Ruth has a question for you. Ruth, go ahead.
So Michael, this committee serves to make recommendations to the Board of Selectmen.
Yep.
As I understand it, that means that the Board of Selectmen will receive the operator's proposal, not this committee. The selectmen will receive the proposal and turn to this committee for its recommendation. Is that correct?
Yeah, the selectmen are the issuing authority for purposes of licensing. So they are the ones who sign off on the license. But oftentimes they will defer to the committee to provide guidance. Many communities have a select board member on the committee as well. Not always, of course, but sometimes.
Well, we do have a liaison,
Yeah.
so that's a plus. But I'm trying to make sure that we understand as a committee that we are not independent agents. We need to be directed to this task by the Board of Selectmen, starting way back at ascertainment. Is that true?
Well, yeah, the typical purpose of the Cable Advisory Committee in many communities, it's disbanded right after the license renewal, and then they create a new committee when the process starts again. They
We've
don't
done
have
that in the past.
right. They
That's
don't have
been us in the past.
right.
But this particular committee has a broader scope.
Right, I understand, and it Concord's a different kind of community. Because I'll tell you, as the three kind, there are the ones I mentioned where they disband, get back together just for the purposes of the license. There are some where the Access Committee, a couple communities in this state, where the Access Committee is a separate entity who is a signatory to the license.
Ooh.
And that committee has sued or threatened to sue the selectmen for even indicating they might consider using some of the monies for
Okay.
something else.
Okay.
Let
you've
us
got-
all cover our ears. We
Yeah,
do
I don't-
not want that to be us.
No, Michael, you have to understand, one of our select board members is on this call. It's Miss Terry Ackerman. And she's very interested in this, so she's all ears. Terry, did you have a question you had for Michael at this point?
Muted.
No, not yet. I'm covering for Matt Johnson today, who's the liaison, but I'm listening. Yeah, I do have a quick question. What is the time frame? When does the current license expire? And
24.
April 24. It's just under 3 years out. You have plenty of time.
so before April 24th, the select board will.
No, April 21st, 2024.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you.
Right, but that 36-month period, you said that the select board's going to get the 626 letter.
You already should have it.
Oh, and that would come to the town manager
Yeah,
office.
yeah.
Okay.
So,
So
and-
we need to be tracking these things down. It's
Right.
more important for this committee than perhaps in the nature of what the Board of Selectmen is looking at overall. They have so many issues. We need to put it on our tickle file to
Right.
make sure that it's attended to.
right, got it. So what has been happening in the past is all the Comcast notices have gone to our town manager's office. And then we hear about it after that. And then
Yeah,
the select board
because
hears about it as well.
The selectmen are the ones who ultimately are the signatories to the license. That's who is responsible to get all the information from Xfinity.
Okay, Michael, let me give you an idea of timing. If you could wrap up your presentation with the next 2 or 3 minutes, whatever high points, I want to open it up to the committee members for questions and then to the other folks as well, okay?
Right, so very quickly, the third kind of place is a place, and there's been a couple, one particularly a couple years ago in Western Mass, who were making these pie in the sky requests of the operator that were so out there that the consultant they had hired couldn't even figure it out. They were getting offered so much. And at the end of the day, the head of the selectmen or the mayor or whatever it was in that place overruled them and just went and negotiated by himself. The one major thing that you will find in this negotiation, so I'll let you know now, is there was a ruling a couple of years ago where the FCC came down and said that basically in-kind benefits can count towards the cap on the franchise fees. So is Concord at 5%?
No, we're at 4.8%. We're familiar with that FCC proceeding. We actually participated in that proceeding, filed comments.
Well, so Comcast, the way they're going to come to you is the following. They're not going to include the free drops in the license anymore. They haven't since January 2020. That's the last time I saw it. I did a thorough search of all new licenses that were signed since January of 2020. I saw a couple in that month and that was it. What they've been telling operators is obviously most of your buildings still have the drop. So you have 3 choices at this point. It's what it boils down to. 1, you get, you simply no longer have the drops in those buildings. 2, they assign a value to the cost of those drops and they deduct it from the franchise fee payment to the town. Or 3, they bill the town separately for the drops. Now, there was a ruling that came out last week, as you're probably familiar, that upheld the FCC in all areas but one particular one, which is kind of important. They said the operators cannot just assign the same cost that you would pay at your home for the service. They can't assign that to every building. Rather, they can only determine what the incremental cost is to offer that service. So they can't bill you at a retail rate. They can only bill you at an incremental cost of giving you the service in that building.
Okay,
Now,
Michael,
Yep.
Michael, can I have you or Lindsay or Courtney send me the link or the citation to that because I'm not aware of that ruling. Not right now, but at
The order?
We can send you the link, Carlin. It's out of the 6th Circuit.
Good. Yeah, I'd like to see that, please. Thank you very much. Go ahead. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay, so basically, then they're taking that order and they're saying that the communities can't, the operator can't just build them out at regular retail. So and some communities have tremendous numbers of connections. And what I think I've heard anecdotally from a few of the government relations people and a few communities is that they start to go over all their buildings and determine which ones need them and which ones don't. So they're kind of doing an inventory and see what's even being used. And at the end of the day, they're going to determine which ones they need. Now, it's important to understand that this is nothing that the local Comcast was interested in have happen, but it has occurred, but they're not billing anyone yet. They haven't done anything of that. They're waiting to see how this all falls out. And then they're waiting for instructions on how to proceed, probably from their higher ups. But right now, they haven't billed anyone. And the only other thing that's been happening, and you'll probably get it once you're renewed, is they've created a consolidated fees schedule. So all your franchise fees, PEG costs, and phone-related fees, anything that you have that's directly on the bill, they're trying to simplify it by creating one percentage, which is inclusive of it all, rather than the franchise fee at 4.8, the PEG access fee at 1%, then the different FCC cost recovery fees, and the FCC fee, and this fee, and that fee. Okay.
Thank you. All right, before I open it to the committee, Lindsay or Courtney, is there anything else that you feel like you need to add at this point? Lindsay?
No, I think Michael covered most of it. The only thing I would add is that if you have any further questions after this, either myself or Michael or Courtney are always available to you guys. Carlin knows how to get in touch with us, so please feel free to reach out.
Great, thank you. Courtney, was there anything you wanted to add?
Oh, I echo that. I have nothing else to add at this time.
Okay, thank you. All right, committee members, questions? I see Ruth first, then Court, then Vince. Ruth, go ahead.
Where in the process do communities generally interact with a consultant?
Well, depending on the community and the complexity of the license, some hire a consultant to do the whole process for them. Others will hire a consultant just to review the license. And, some hire a consultant to get in towards the end when you've done most of the heavy lifting on your own, just to make sure that everything looks good and that you're not missing anything. So it really, with a committee the size you have with Carlin there, I think you have kind of a body of knowledge that many of the smaller communities don't necessarily have, but it's really on an individual community basis as to how you proceed.
So is it correct then that we would take our direction from the select board?
Yes.
I would imagine that the select board is doing the hiring, not this committee.
Right.
And will craft what that process looks like. But the select board is no more well-informed than the bulk of us. Perhaps, as you say, Carlin is best informed.
Well, that's understandable. And like I said, every community is different. And I think a lot of it depends. It used to be that when you would sign a license is when you would get your cable system rebuilt. You would go from 440 to 550, 550 to 660 to 750. And what would happen is over those 10 years, you would go from having the best to the worst, and you couldn't wait to sign the license to get back up there. But everyone now is at a state-of-the-art platform in Massachusetts. And as soon as the service is rolled out, it gets rolled out in Boston and in Concord and on the Cape and in the Berkshires and in Vermont. Everyone gets it within 3 months. High-def DVR service, all kinds of the high-speed internets that they're providing, which are not part of this process, but nonetheless, everyone's getting the same level of service because that's the nature of the business now, and the network works. And the operators, of course, all these services provide revenue, and they want to get them out there as quick as possible. So one of the major things that was involved no longer really is as big an issue.
Okay, here's where we start jumping in with questions, Michael. Court, I said you could go next, quick thing, and then we'll go to Terry after that.
Yeah, I'm happy to defer to Terry, only to say, Michael, I know I've heard from you before. This has been very, very helpful. In regard to consultants, we have been served well in the past, but I'm not convinced we would need a consultant throughout. I can imagine bringing in one of the specialists to do the strategic planning prior. That's my current thinking about it.
Okay, Terry, how about you? Go ahead, Terry.
Yeah, similar questions. who have you used in the past? Are you inclined to go with a consultant this time, or you don't know? And when, if the contract expires April 24, when do you start using a consultant? Is it in 21 or a year ahead or what?
And who are those questions for,
I
Terry?
guess Carlin. So what
was afraid of that.
are you guys, I know you haven't really discussed it yet, but well, who did you use in the past?
I think we've used Bill Solomon in the past.
Bill Solomon,
and I
okay.
think- And I think we need about an 18-month runway, but I'm not a very informed guy in that regard. That's just my uninformed guess.
Okay, I would like to talk with Carlin or Court or whoever offline about that. I have some experience also with Bill Solomon, and we can talk offline.
Yeah, that was a number of years ago. I don't even know.
Yeah,
if he's
me
active
too.
in this arena.
There are some other gentlemen and ladies who are participating in this field as well. Ruth, go ahead.
On the subject of consultant, we might want to check with Nancy Pierce to see who Carlisle is using. And then on a change of topic, please, if I can go back to the free drops. I am assuming that that has to do with onto town assets. So tying in the townhouse or the Harvey or, you know, whatever it is. And I'm assuming those drops that are being counted are only new drops, and that what we already have it's in a database someplace of aren't we lucky, but we're not paying for them again. And that brings up the question of who maintains that database.
Just so you know, the state, there is a statute, Lindsay, I don't remember which one, which requires operators to provide a drop and a connection to all public buildings in a community, but it does not require them to provide service. We don't have it written in there, and someone might say, well, wait a minute, if you have to give a free drop and a free connection, wouldn't it imply you have to provide service? But if the FCC rule holds, then that's still going to require the operator, the community to pay for that, be the incremental or what have you.
Okay, all right, Ruth, hold on. I need to give Vince a chance to ask a question because he hasn't asked any questions yet. And I'd like to wrap up the DTC portion of this discussion in about another 10 to 15 minutes at the most, because we have other things to cover today. Okay, so Vince, do you have any questions at this time?
Michael, I wonder, in your experience, what is the average term of contracts in the recent past?
Well, it's interesting. I deal with all the operators in the state. So there was a point of time where Charter was only doing 5-year licenses. But now they're back to going to 10. In general, Comcast has always pushed for 10. Charter was shorter. Verizon is now going into its second round of licenses. So the first licenses can be up to 15 years, initial. But Verizon is now doing its own thing. They're requiring all licenses to have language that they can unilaterally terminate the license at any time, because they might have a different way to go. But in general, for your operator, they always push for the 10 years. I have seen them as short as 5 years in certain instances. And for Comcast, nothing shorter, but typically it's 7, but mostly 10.
Okay,
It seems
other questions? Go ahead.
Well, it seems that a shorter term may be an advantage if 1-year extensions, for instance, would apply, to whatever the 10-year or even longer typical contract might be. Is that really a plausible strategy?
Well, you have to look at it from both their manpower and also yours, particularly when you're talking about paying a consultant. So, if you're going to hire a consultant, you're not going to want to make that investment any more than you would have to, I would think. What's happened is, particularly now, and I'm sorry if I got sidetracked, but once you have 30 days if you reject the license to file a preliminary assessment of denial. But if you talk to the operator and they assent, which they always do, we've granted extensions to file that for 120 days. And we've done it on some operators, some communities have gotten 2 or 3 extensions. Oftentimes the consultants are overwhelmed with what they have, so they do it for that reason. But so we've had some 10-year licenses that the extension of time to file that preliminary assessment of denial has brought them for another year. But the community keeps getting paid all the obligations under the existing license unless there was a capital grant that expired. But other than that, it would typically be business as usual.
Okay, all right.
It's a complicated question about shortening the license, but we can talk about that separately.
Okay, we have about another 12 minutes for this. Before we go on to other questions from members of the audience, Lindsay or Courtney, do you have anything to add to what Michael said so far? Yeah, this is how I check to make sure you're staying awake. I'm joking.
We're still here. I mean, obviously, it's got to be a town decision. We can't really recommend one thing or another. But I think, as Michael said, the typical license is 10 years, particularly with this provider. And typically what we've seen, especially after the initial license or 2, is that there's not a lot of change between the license terms. So, it's certainly a judgment call depending on how many items the town wants to negotiate. But typically what we see is a 10-year term. So.
Thank you. Courtney, anything to add?
Nothing to add to what Lindsay and Michael said already.
Okay, good. All right, I'm going to open it up to the audience. If there are any audience questions for the DTC, again, I'm going to try and wind this portion of the conversation up in the next 10 minutes.
Oh, Carlin?
Michael? Yes.
Carlin, one other question here.
Fire away, Vince.
One of the issues in Concord is that there are actually 2 substantial service providers now. One is Comcast and one is Concord's own town municipal fiber service. And that fiber service now has, I think it's 1,600 customers at the last count. So it's really creeping up, over 30%. What is the likelihood that Concord is going to become a deregulated town in the foreseeable future?
And this
All
is
right.
deregulated for cable TV service, Vince? Is that what you're talking about?
No, for internet service
Oh, for internet. Well,
and cable TV service.
There is no regulation anymore for, there never was for internet. And as of October, is that right, Lindsay? September, yeah. October, there's no longer any regulation of cable TV service.
Well, there's no rate regulation for cable TV.
Right, pretty sure it's free.
interesting.
Okay.
As of September. Could you send me that order too, please? I'd appreciate that. Okay, so.
No, we don't share that one with anyone.
Okay, all right. Okay, other questions from the audience? David Allen, you had a question? Go ahead, David. Please go ahead, David.
Certainly appreciate this. Thank you. On this committee, a member or 2 of it have raised questions about whether or not Comcast might consider going to 5G instead of stringing coax. I'm curious what your own perspective suggests in that regard. You will have some sense for where Xfinity is headed and what the scuttlebutt in this space is.
So, well, the first thing I would say is just to be clear, the department doesn't regulate wireless service, and 5G would be considered wireless service. But with that said, what we have seen in recent years is that Comcast has begun broadening its service offerings and entering into partnerships with wireless carriers and then bundling those services in a combined billed offering. And I would expect that those services are probably already offered in your community. They're offered pretty widely through Comcast's regular residential offerings as an add-on wireless service. So you know, I would expect that to continue. I think that all of these providers are branching out with service offerings, particularly with ISP service offerings and wireless broadband service offerings. What you will see is all of the cable ISPs are rolling out new versions of the cable protocol. It's called DOCSIS. They're now onto a new version, which they're claiming can offer speeds up to 10 gigabits a second. So you are seeing cable providers and the coaxial to speed capabilities and service offerings. So I think you probably see a continuation of that, particularly in a community like Concord, where there is competitive pressure to improve service offerings.
Okay, thank you, Lindsay. Other questions from the audience?
If I could just add real quick, by the
Go
way,
ahead, Michael.
that's one of the reasons that I've heard that Verizon is having the termination language in their licenses, is because if they decide to go with 5G and go to an app-based service, they probably will stop offering TV service as we know it.
If I could follow up,
Go ahead, David.
and again, appreciations. And you go, Michael, to, of course, where the questions I was at point, which is substituting the wireless for the cable based. In the case of Verizon, of course, it's fiber, it's not coax. In any event, I'm hearing that on the one hand, at least Verizon might be thinking about that. Let's forget about stringing stuff. And they obviously quit and didn't expand further. They got hammered by Wall Street over it. They might find it attractive. The real question is whether or not you get real reliability. But that aside from the point, I appreciate also, Lindsay, you're pointing out that if they continue, if Xfinity Comcast continues down the extant wire-based road, they've got the option for 10G, for goodness sake, 10 gig. I myself have a gig. I must say how much I appreciate it. Whether or not the 10 gig would find appeal, well, anyway, thank you very much. Really appreciate the heads up here.
Thanks. Other questions from the audience? Okay, I've got a, Nancy, do you have a question? You turn your camera on now. Turn on your microphone, please. Nancy, hold on. Your microphone's still on. There you
Okay,
go.
very quickly. I don't want to take a lot of time. I want to just clarify, based on Ruth's question, that the drops that you're talking about, the new ruling requiring the town to pay for, are not residential drops that already exist. They're drops to public buildings. Is that right?
It's
Did
the
I
drop-
understand that right?
Right, the public buildings drops, but you wouldn't be paying for the drop and the connection. It'd be paying, the issue now is the service to all those drops. And according to the new ruling, you would have to start paying for that service. You already have the drop, you already have the connection. It's just a
Okay,
matter of
but it's
paying.
not, they wouldn't be charging for existing drops that are already wired.
Well, they're not going to back charge you for
Yeah,
something.
okay, all right, thank
No.
you. I don't want to take any more time. Thank you.
Okay. Question I had for you, any of you three, is do you have any sense on the whether or not the Comcast revenues are going to be declining over the next 5 years? We have some sense here in Concord, it's not a steep decline. There is a diminution? Do you have any inkling of how it's going on a state level?
I'm sorry.
You mean cable revenues?
Yes, cable TV revenues.
Go ahead, Michael. You go
I
ahead.
was just gonna say, for sure, cable revenues are declining. I mean, internet revenues are increasing. And I guess cable revenue, the increase in costs, the increase in the charges aren't keeping up necessarily with those numbers of people who are cutting service. But it's a major complaint because we do have a lot of communities who are always asking us about pushing, for things which we can't really control, internet, using that as a part of the basis for the percentage of franchise fees and things of that nature, because they are losing revenues in the normal scheme of their cable operations. There's no question that the revenues have gone down. I don't think it's as nearly as dramatic in the suburban communities as it is in the bigger cities, where it's more of a transient community and there's a lot more options and a lot of students who simply get internet and then take various app-based services.
Gotcha. Okay. I'm going to get this wrapped up here. Lindsay, do you and Courtney and Michael have any final comments and observations or recommendations for us? Please go ahead, Lindsay.
No, once again, I'll just say thanks and good luck to you all. And you know how to reach us if you have any other questions.
Great. Courtney, what about you?
I would like to echo that. Thank you for having us. And of course, we're at your disposal.
Good. Thank you. Michael, what about yourself? Last word.
Yep. So very basically, I've done these presentations and oftentimes I'll make some points and people have it in the back of their head. And then all of a sudden something will come up which will trigger like, what, you talked about that, or what should we do? Feel free to reach out to me at any point. Carolyn has my email and I'd be more than happy to provide the answer or find the answer if I didn't have it. And use our resource database.
We will. Well, look, that'll be our summer assignment. Let's look at the comparables. Gentlemen and lady, thank you very much for attending. Appreciate that. You're welcome to continue on this call if you wish. We're going to move on to the next agenda item, which is moving over to our station manager, Phil Lipsevich. He's going to be giving us an update of what's going on at the studio. Okay, Phil, take it away.
Great. Thank you, Carlin. Just a quick update. May has been a busy month, just like all the other months have been, with a lot of productions, mostly boards and committees. We've done over 40 meetings this month, or I should say for the past month of May. We have in addition 8 community-based productions, a high school production, 1 community-produced program, and 1 more item working with the Concord Ag Committee. So that's 51 for this past month. We also have a few things in the works. The farm mural project is just in the works at this point. Is a Carlisle garden tour, and just put something up this morning with the Concord Carlisle High School Orchestra. So again, being very busy with things happening. We have lost this position. Isabel, our lead producer, has taken a job in the production world. So presently her position is going to be filled. So hopefully we'll have that soon because it's now down to 2 of us full time. However, on the good news side, we did hire a part-time videographer. So we're kind of treading water basically where we were. And that comes at a good time because this weekend we have high school graduation on Saturday, Carlisle town meeting on Sunday, and the following Sunday, of course, will be Concord's town meeting. So just a very quick sketch of how things have been going here, but busy as usual.
It does sound like you're covering quite a bit. Are there any questions from the committee for Phil? Committee members first.
Not for me, thank you.
Okay, Vince, you've got your hand up. Go ahead, Vince.
Phil, when are the local Emmy Awards taking place actually this year?
Yeah, I believe that's, I want to say June 27th that will be taking place. So that hasn't happened yet. I can get the information and send it to Carlin and she could send it out to everybody.
Okay, thanks.
Sounds good. Okay, Carol, did you have a question? Go ahead, Carol.
Yeah, Phil, you mentioned the Carlisle Garden Tour. Is that going to be live on TV or one of your YouTube videos?
Well, it'll be on TV, and on YouTube as well. That will not be live. The garden tour itself, I believe, is next Saturday, I think. But this is a project working with Joeth Barlis, and she's focusing on 5 of the gardens, and she wants to do a condensed project. I've been with a couple of these folks for the past few days. Beautiful gardens, very passionate people. I was there for over an hour for everybody that I've been with so far, and so it's going to be boiling that down. So they have a lot to say. So I think for the tour, the actual live tour, people will be very busy. But again, what the finished product will be having will be excuse me.
Would love to know when you're going to produce that and put it on TV so that I can put it into the
right.
sealed bulletin. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll keep you up to date on that.
Okay.
I don't have a date at this moment.
Okay.
Okay, other questions from the committee? Court, did you have something?
No, thank you. Well, only to say that we have been contacted by the consultant in Carlisle, so we can loop back and find out who that was. Like, it doesn't come to me offhand, but that party is known to us.
Okay, okay. Vince, did you have something for any questions for Phil?
Nothing more.
And Ruth, what about you?
When is the PEG award plaque going up?
Okay.
That's the Carlin question.
Yeah, that's the Carlin question. Let me give you that quick update on that. This is for the PEG Access Program Awards. I went down to Crosby Design and talked to Bill, the owner of the shop. This is probably about a week and a half ago. He said, well, I'm going to assign it to someone else and one of my staff, and we'll get back to you on the price and on the timing. I called today, left a voice message saying, hey, I have to give an update. What's going on? Haven't heard back yet. So I think tomorrow I'm going to walk down to Crosby Design and find out. But I have spoken to Bill about the design. He does have it. He was going to assign one of his workers to it. I don't think we'll need to have a meeting to do this, but what I'm envisioning is once the plaque is done, that I'm going to send a message around to the committee members saying, hey, we're going to do a presentation and someone's going to take a picture of us. Do you want me to in front of the studio or someplace where we hand this thing over to Phil and Aaron or however we're going to do it? And then we figure out a time and place, give out the plaque award, do a press release and send it out on to the Concord Journal. So to answer your question, Ruth, don't know yet. It'll probably all happen sometime this summer. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you.
My pleasure. Any other questions for Phil at this point? Okay. All right. I think we've pretty much done the MMN update on that one, going back to the agenda. And I've also given you the update on the PEG Access Program Awards. We have up to about 20 minutes left to talk about a couple of things. And here are a couple of things we could do. We could talk about the PAC charge. We keep putting that off in a while. We could open this up and talk about comments regarding the franchise renewal or anything else. Do the committee members have a preference on how we take this? Ruth, Court, what do you think? Okay, all right, then what I'd like to do is, it would be convenient if we had some more discussion regarding the PAC charge, and I can pull it up on the screen. The only revision that I'm proposing, and you guys are welcome to propose others again, is to change the number of members from a total of 7 to a total of 5. And what that does is essentially change the number of citizens at large from 5 people to 3 people. So it's a reduction overall from 7 to 5, which means the citizens at large reduced from 5 to 3. We talked a little bit about this at our last meeting, and I'm wondering if you folks have any other questions or concerns, because we happen to have a quorum here. We could vote on this if you are ready to vote. If you're not ready to vote, and to me, the motion should be to approve the reduction from 7 people down to 5. making it so that we have 3 citizens at large instead of the current 5. If there's something else you want to do, let me know, because if we don't do it now, we have to put it over till September. Ruth, go ahead.
Exactly that came to mind. I would like us as a fully informed committee to take that vote now, and I would be happy to make the motion echoing your words, because if we wait, then we have to wait until we get a full complement of new members and they are allowed to come up to speed. We at least have talked about this, and we have had several meetings wherein we have tossed around different issues and are ready to make a recommendation to the select board. It's totally up to them. Oh, yes, it's a select board, isn't it, Terry?
Yeah.
And now would seem to be the best time in the scheme of things.
Okay. Terry, do you have any observations at this point? Because what I'd like to do after you speak is I'm going to show the proposed revisions on the screen in a screen share, so you can see what I'm talking about. Terry, do you have anything to add at this point?
No, Ruth is correct. This is good timing, and the select board is the board that will vote to change the charge if you recommend it.
Okay.
No, they will consider making the
Consider,
charge.
right. The select board will be the ones to decide and vote whether to take your recommendation. Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay,
I'm very protective.
Yeah.
well done. I'm going to do a screen share just very briefly so that we can see what the actual proposed revisions are. And ignore the zebras in the background. All right, this is, I'm going to scroll up at the top. The PEG access charge, the last time it was revised was March 5, 2018. The revisions are in yellow. So under section C, the PEG access advisory committee should be composed of 5 voting members instead of 7. And then in the paragraph after that, the membership shall be as follows. It goes 1 citizen with experience, 1 representative designated by the school committee. And instead of 5 citizens at large, change that to 3 citizens at large. And then as you can see in the rest of the charge, there are no other changes.
Mhm.
So those are the 2 proposed changes. I'm going to do a stop. I'm going to stop sharing now. Get back to full screen. Could I have a motion, please? Do you want me to phrase it, or do you want to phrase it? Whoever wants to make the motion.
I would move that this committee approve a recommendation to amend our charge and transmit that recommendation to the select board such that the membership is reduced from 5 to 7 and that the at-large members are reduced from 5 to 3. I think I said that backwards.
I think you said that backwards. I think you mean, I think if I'm correct.
7 to 5 and 5 to 3.
That sounds good. Okay, that's a good motion. Do I have a
Second.
second? And I have a second from Court. Do we have any other discussion?
I think it's necessary, good, bad, or indifferent. It's the nature of things. And I think 5 people and all the public nature of this will continue to serve us well.
Frankly, I would agree. Vince, how do you feel? Do you have any observations about it?
No, I think it's a good idea.
Okay, all right, let's do a roll call vote. All in favor of the motion, Carlin Reed votes yes. Ruth Lauer votes
Yes.
Court Booth,
Yes.
and Vince Carlson.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes. Thank you all very much. I really do appreciate that. Okay, that means we're done with the charge. Terry, I will let Matt know, but I'll be doing this in some type of version. I only have the PDF version. I don't have the Word version, but I'd like to do a strikeout changes version. I'll work with, I guess, actually probably Jeremy, someone who has the Word version, to make the transmittal to the select board. And then you folks can take it up at your convenience. There's not a major rush since we're not planning to meet again until September. So you've got a lot of things on your plate. Is that satisfactory, Terry?
Of course, thank you.
Good. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Let me just say, I have to leave in 3 minutes for another meeting.
Okay, why don't you go ahead with your comment? Do you have any observations, liaisons? That's the next thing.
Okay, I thank you for all the work you do. I don't have any questions or comments, but I think, and Carlin, I'd like to talk with you offline about consultants.
Yeah, speaking.
Sounds good, will do. All right, any other liaisons? Carol, how about from Concord on
Yeah, I'm
Council on
fine. I
Aging?
wonder if
Do
I
you
can
have
call
liaisons
you
there?
back in 5 minutes at this number.
Hold on.
I know.
I got it. Okay, go ahead, Carol.
All right. No, I have nothing to say. Just for your information, the council is opening up Harvey Wheeler next week for a limited number of classes. And basically, as far as we know, 90% of the seniors in Concord, people over 60, have been vaccinated. So, yeah, very good.
Good job. Good job. Okay, let's see. Court, did you have any observations on behalf of the school committee?
No,
Unmute. Nothing to bring forward right now. No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Got it. All right, other public comments from anybody?
Carlin, just before we get to the public comments.
Right.
just wanted-
Go for it.
Okay, no, there was an item there on interim activities, and that kind of implied that there were interim activities for the committee, but I don't think that's actually the case. I think there is a couple of issues that, I don't know, at least I and Mark and David and you and some other people have discussed from time to time. One that you brought up several times now was a pilot project on Concord Light broadband to get the fiber, particularly into multi-unit dwellings. And that appears to be something that, is one of the big, I guess, open areas where there really hasn't been much penetration for a variety of reasons. If everybody has a chance to take a vacation, and I hope they do, but they still have some time left over in the summer, I think it might be worthwhile to at least start talking about some planning in that direction. There is federal money in, the Biden various infrastructure proposals that potentially will support that. And waiting until the fall is a kind of a long time. I don't know about the general attitude on a related or semi-related topic about Article 41. Is that supported in the way that people think it should be supported right now, in terms of the time between now and town meeting? Is there any position or lobbying that anybody in the PEG committee here would want to engage in relative to that?
On that particular point, Vince, on that particular point, I will note that in the town meeting materials, the very last item is our committee's recommendation to urge affirmative action on Article 41. So the town meeting materials are now available online, and we have the privilege of being the very last thing. So our information got in.
Okay, that's the only comments that I have.
Okay, Ruth, go ahead.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that we've tippy-toed around this discussion several times about the pilot and our committee's role in said pilot. And we keep getting pushback that the town should be looking at a new committee focused on this, and it should not come from the light plant because they're too busy. And it should not come from this committee because our committee is specifically cable. So I think that needs to be settled. And I grant you that people who are interested in it should get going on it, but I don't know if they can get going in the name of PAAC.
I suspect that Article 41, its resolution, will help with answer that question. Vince,
Yeah.
did you have anything else? Okay, any other public comments, observations, whatever? David, go ahead.
Just to follow up this discussion, as far as Article 41 is concerned, I'm certainly strongly on record thinking that we need to do this. Basically, the town's fiber system has matured in terms of acceptance in the community. And now we have some relatively small, but nonetheless, some part of the town who don't have access, largely because there's no undergrounding. And it's going to cost between $10 and $20 million to go there, which is between 2.5 and 5 times the amount originally put into the fiber system. Bottom line, as I've said, in my view, 41 is important. We need to go there. And clearly it's about multiple dwelling unit situations as well. I don't think the town wants or should have a forked effort on this. If 41 passes, and I think we ought to go to town meeting and do what we can to make that happen. If 41 passes, I think all the focus needs to be on the committee that will be created to take this forward. It's not a small question. It's going to take, as I've said, not only money, but serious effort. So I strongly encourage getting 41 passed and then getting behind it to deal with these questions. Thanks.
Thank you, David. Lois and Paul, you've not said much today. I was wondering if Lois, you might like, if you had a question or observation, or Paul. Lois, how about you first?
I'd just like to thank Ruth for her service. It's been a long time. She's one of probably the first people I filmed a long time ago and met and whatever. Thank you so much, Ruth, for all your service.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
And one of the things on, I'm not really familiar, I'm sorry, I had some things I haven't gotten really familiar with the town warrant. One of the things about the fiber cable, I don't know if it's the particular type of cable that the light company uses that needs to be buried so far in the ground. This is one of the reasons why it's so expensive. The cable has to be buried. For some reason, the light company seems to do that, whereas Comcast, it's very superficial how deep the Comcast cable is. So it's much easier to put in. If you don't have all this digging, you have a little bit of like it's virtually a little more than shovel depth that their cable goes in, and it's laid very, very close to the ground, which, I mean, it can break pretty easily, but it can be fixed pretty easily. It's not as big a deal in terms of installation. So that makes a very, very big difference in the cost. I mean, it's absolutely astronomical, the difference in cost by the way it's laid. And I don't know the answers there. And, I think it's something to consider. Is it absolutely necessary that the fiber cable from the light company, has to be buried, whatever, so many feet deep, and yet, Comcast is inches? David may have an answer. Thanks.
Hold on. Hey, Lois, thank you. Appreciate that. I want to go to Phil first, give him a chance, and then I'll go to David. Phil?
Okay.
I'm sorry, I said Phil. Paul, did you have anything that you wanted to add to this? And then we'll go to David.
I'm eager to hear David's answer to Lois, but I also would like to know from David, how was the fiber put in for Carlisle's emergency services?
Okay, David.
It happens. I'm not familiar with the particular arrangements in Carlisle, so unfortunately, I don't have any useful information there, but a call to the light plant would get you that very quickly. I don't have the rules right here in front of me, and I can't even claim to be familiar in the kind of detail I think would be useful, but the basic situation is the following. The town tolerates overhead cables, wires, where there are overheads. Where there are not overheads, they do not, in simple words. And that means that where there is already underground, any additions in this particular case, more fiber optics, will have to go in the ground. I don't have a relative comparison of shallower versus deeper, but I do know that if you're serious about putting in your fiber optics, you're going to put it in a conduit, and that's going to mean whether it's shallow or deep, you got to dig up, you got to go under streets. It gets very expensive. But what's to appreciate here is that the town has adopted the protocol that, as I say, where things are already underground, any future thing will be underground, and that will mean putting in a conduit. A little bit more detail there. You'd say, well, if we've already got underground, why don't we just use the existing conduit? Well, it turns out that some places don't actually have any conduit. You know, the town's electricity distribution goes back 130 years now. Guess what? Some of that didn't have conduit. And in other cases, the conduit does not have any space in it for but more fiber. Now, I'm just parroting what I know from a decade and a half of light plant board meetings and actually being the guilty party for bringing fiber here in the first place. But that's a story for another universe.
Thank you, David.
I hope that, and I have to say, Ruth and I played a role in this. We both remember so well. And let me add my thanks to Ruth for her
Very welcome.
continued long service.
As well.
Thank you.
Okay, Ruth, go ahead. And then Lois.
I have two more seconds, and I am going to echo David here. He's right on the rules. We've been doing this since the 80s, and these utilities have been charging ratepayers a percentage on every monthly bill that should be being held and used for this purpose. Now, it's not a huge amount per each bill, but hey, I'm paying it. And usually what happens is the utility saves it up until they have enough money to do a particular area. And in the meantime, I think I'm correct here, David, the town generally alerts the utilities where they're going to be working and offers to design on their behalf what and where that conduit will run. And while I was on the other side of the desk, the utilities would say, no, thank you. We'll do that ourselves. And we've been shy of getting results.
Thanks for the observation. Ruth, hold on. Lois, go ahead, Lois. Then we'll go back down.
Wait a second. I paid attention to something else. Some of the conduit in town actually is also, I'm not sure who the conduit that came in from the street for the Peter Bulkley building, I'm not sure who laid it, but Comcast has exclusive right to it.
Got it.
So, I mean, it gets complicated.
It does.
There's apparently room in the conduit, but they have exclusive right to the conduit that comes in from, I believe it's Stowe Street into the Peter Bulkley building.
Yeah, and generally they lay the conduit, but they lay it dark. And so they can later sell it, but it's their choice.
Okay, 2 more minutes. Last shots. Anybody? David, go ahead.
It's precisely this level of detail that a Article 41 committee must get to. Where are our issues, what's going to be involved, among other things, engineering-wise and money-wise to make it happen. I know, once again, from light plant board meetings, that there's was an undergrounding thrust going back, once again, to Ruth's 80s, and we wanted to do it. Well, it turned out that at the rate that we saved money, accumulated money, as Ruth described, it would be 100 years before we had enough money to put that conduit in.
Gotcha.
And it just underlines that a big part of this will be the money. Are we going to decide we want to bond that? As I say, 2.5 to 5 times what was originally spent. And then getting at all this detail, Peter Bulkley, but for goodness sake, all the other places, the multi-dwelling units and so forth.
Good, well,
Let's go on to Article 41 and make it happen.
let's stay tuned for annual meeting. All right, folks, I'm closing this out now. A reminder, the next meeting will be September 9. It's a Thursday at 1:00 p.m. Location to be determined. Stay tuned, I'll let you know. You all have a good summer. My interim project is to be going through some of that database that the DTC has to see what's been going on with various franchise agreements, and I'll have a chart ready for you when I see you in September, okay? All right, is there any, Phil, you just turned your video on. Was there anything else that you need to add?
No, just want to say, have a good summer. Thank you.
Have a good summer.
Thank you.
folks. Thanks. We're done.
Ruth,
Bye.
Carolyn, thank you.
Wait a minute, adjourn, adjourn.
Oh, I'm
adjourn.
sorry. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Can I have a second?
Second,
A second. Roll call vote. Vince Carlson, do you want to adjourn?
all right.
Ruth Lauer,
Aye.
Court Booth,
Aye.
Carolyn Reed says yes. We're done. Another
Thank you
successful
all.
year. Good job, folks.
Thank you so much.
Bye.